Hello, everyone. As we have global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Great to have you in this session. My name is Larissa Brinkmann from the SAP Global User Groups organization, and I'm your host. Welcome to the session. We will talk about unlocking your green supply chain with SAP Sustainability Data Exchange. By the way, today is the awareness session, but we'll be also offering a deep dive session. It will be following up on this one. Will be offered on the 19th of February. You will find the sign up link in the description to this video, and I will also post it in the chat for you for your convenience. I'm happy to announce our speakers. We have Leyi, who is Product Marketing Manager of SAP Sustainability Data Exchange, and we have Tim van Kerkhof, who is Product Manager of SAP Sustainability Data Exchange. They will lead us through the session. Before handing over to our speakers, let me share a few housekeeping rules. We kindly ask to post your questions in the live chat. For this, you need to be signed on the, YouTube so we can get your question. Our speakers can answer the questions at the end of the presentation. And the additional materials of this session, like PDF, will be included in the description to this video shortly after the session is over. With this, now let's start. And over to you, Leyi.
Yeah, thank you, Larissa, and also happy welcome from my side. And my name is Leyi, and as Larissa introduced, I'm based in Germany and Waldorf, and happy to be here and share the product, a Sustainability Data Exchange, with you. So let me share my screen. Okay, so today, let me go to the agenda. So we will start with challenges of supply chain sustainability at general, just give you a broader picture of what we are facing and what our observations are. And then I will hand over to my colleague Tim to really share more details on the product level about the SAP Sustainability Data Exchange. Then at the end, we will also share some information about how SAP's approach to scale really the carbon data sharing across the supply chain within other networks. So with that, before we really deep dive into the specifics of the SAP solution as such, right? It's important to understand the broader picture, especially on also in today's supply chain sustainability situation. So as we navigate through the 21st century, sustainability has become a cornerstone of modern business strategy. And companies around the globe are not only evaluated on their financial performance, but also on their environmental and social impact. A sustainable supply chain is no longer a nice to have, it's a business imperative. Firstly, from a regulation and policy perspective, the increasing number of regulations aimed at greater transparency and environmental responsibility pose a significant challenge to the current businesses. And company must navigate varying standards across regions, which often require substantial adjustment to existing practices, which can, of course, lead to increased costs and complexity. And moving on to supply disruptions, I think you are not you're much more familiar with that, right? Recent global events have highlighted the fragility of the supply chains. No matter it's natural disasters, geographical tensions, or pandemics, this disruption can hold the flow of materials and goods, and stressing, of course, the need for resilience as well as for sustainable continuity plans. Additionally, there is a growing demand from stakeholders for business to prioritize sustainability. For example, consumers, investors, as well as employees are increasingly advocating for low carbon products and practices. And companies need to prove to provide the provenance on their decarbonization investment as well efforts, for example. And the same applies also for brand reputation. Sustainability has become integral to companies' identity, and brands that fail to adopt unsustainable practices face reputational risks that can impact customer loyalty, of course, as well as their market positioning. And on the other side, those companies who proactively address these issues can enhance their market appeal as well as the stakeholder trust. And lastly, technology, right? So that's what we are here also to talk about. It offers both a challenge and an opportunity. That means emerging technologies can lead to significant efficiency improvement and innovations in sustainable practices. But of course, the rapid pace of technological change can demand consistent adaptation and investment to leverage those technology tools effectively. So as we navigate the complex landscape of supply chain sustainability, actually decarbonization emerges as one of the most pressing and pivotal challenges. When we look at the distribution of the emissions, right, scope 3 emissions, which are indirect emissions from upstream and downstream value chain activities, make up roughly 75% of the total carbon emissions in average in a company. And globally, about half of all the emission or greenhouse gas emissions come from supply chain activities in major industries. And despite of the large impact, many companies have not yet set the specific goals to reduce their scope 3 emissions. And because unlike the emissions produced by their own operation, known as scope 1 and scope 2, right? Scope 3 emissions are not really in the control of the company itself, not in the operational boundary of the company itself. So, but as regulation and guidelines for reporting scope 3 emissions continues to evolve, and companies feel like under pressure and a growing pressure, while it's not yet mandatory in many places to report scope 3 emissions compared to scope 1 and scope 2, but there's a clear trend towards needing more transparency and accountability access across the whole supply chain to report those supply chain activity emissions. And companies are advised also to start voluntarily reporting their scope 3 emissions. But what are the hurdles actually to prevent companies to assess and reduce their scope 3 emissions? And here we bring some current common practice or current situation from the industry we observed. And today, many industries still predominantly rely on secondary databases, right? And also on average data to estimate their emission performance. But this approach, of course, lacks precision because there's limited availability of supplier-specific data to accurately measure the emissions. And another significant hurdle is the insistent methodology and standards used to carbon calculation and data exchange across different sectors. And this lack of uniformity makes it difficult for companies to confidently, of course, and consistently track their emission throughout the supply chain. And moreover, the communication channels, this is more on the technical side, right, which are currently used basically like Excels or emails fly around and also via various online portals. And this adds another layer of complexity. And these tools are often disparate and lack seamless integration. And this leads to efficiencies and errors in data handling. And without interoperable solutions, it becomes challenging to establish a coherent and reliable picture of Scope 3 emissions. And these pain points highlight the need for more standardized practices, right? And also integrated systems that facilitate better data sharing and then to achieve data accuracy and comparability. So, and to, of course, to effectively tackle these challenges, companies, especially large firms, also industries have already acknowledged or have the common understanding that we need to collaborate. And the collaboration across the entire supply chain or supply network is essential. And that is where global organizations and consortia play a pivotal role. So organizations like World Business Council for Sustainable Development and like industry initiatives like Catena X, which is the automotive network started here in Europe, are actively working to address these issues through both industry agnostic and industry specific collaborations. And these groups focus on harmonizing methodologies and data exchange practices and ensure that they align with existing and emerging regulatory standards. These efforts aim to create a consistent framework that companies can adopt, right, facilitating more accurate and streamlined emission reporting. And SAP is one of the key participants or players in these initiatives, so contributing to drive towards standardization and also digital collaboration. By engaging in these working groups, SAP helps to shape interoperable solutions that make it easier for businesses across various industries to share data and insight in a coherent and efficient manner. And that's also what we are doing with our SAP Sustainability Data Exchange solution, and that we will come to that later. And I have already mentioned the word standardization quite a lot and quite often, and it is actually the foundation, right, for industries as well as supply networks to achieve accurate emission data and achieve also the data comparability at the end. Standardization, from my opinion, it contains different dimensions. And the first of all is the methodology. So as you can see on screen, the PACT framework developed by World Business Council for Sustainable Development aims to harmonize, for example, the carbon accounting and ensure the interoperability in product carbon footprint data sharing. And meanwhile, this methodology has been also widely adopted for emission assessment and exchange across the globe. And building upon this foundational standard, there are also industry-specific extensions that tailor the framework to meet the unique industry, particular industry needs. And for instance, as I mentioned, like Catena X, which is the automotive as a sector, and automotive network has developed the comprehensive rulebook for the automotive industry. And this pioneering effort sets the clear guidance or guidelines for emissions data within that sector and ensuring consistency and comparability. And of course, there are also more industries also coming up with those approaches, for example, like chemicals, also like the metals mining, for example, right? We see more and more these standardizations approaches are getting aligned more and more. And of course, the second, apart from the methodology part, right? The second crucial dimension in the standardization is the carbon data sharing as the technological infrastructure. And here is where the network infrastructure is so essential to host and to enable a seamless data sharing. And this is also where SAP Sustainability Data Exchange plays a pivotal role. And with that, I would like to hand over to our product manager, Tim, to give you more insights on the network approach on the technical side, as well as more insights and details on the product side. Then over
thank
to
you very much. So from that perspective on, that means that SDX, as Leyi was explaining, is a multi-platform integration solution where we focus on using the standardized methodologies as defined by those platforms or those organizations to universally control the communication and ensure that everybody in the supply chain communicates based on those same standards, which basically means that everybody speaks the same language, which is a core aspect of what we want to achieve within SAP and which is one of the core drivers of SDX. And especially if you look at the picture where you can see Green Ledger already mentioned as well, which was released a couple of months back, it's going to be imperative to make sure that that we all speak the same language, that we all understand, and that you understand the values that you're getting from your suppliers. And this is where the focus will be. And as you'll see at the bottom, also more platforms to come. There are different initiatives that are running that are expanding those different platforms or to separate platforms as well. And the aim would be to extend as those platforms also become available. On the next slide, we would have a look at sort of what now exists as a portfolio. So as a portfolio, we now have an application which is called Sustainability Data Exchange. It is general available and a BTP application that you can subscribe through either through your regular account activities or through the sap.com website. So on the sap.com website, you can also directly procure the solution. We have two types of subscriptions, which we'll go into a little bit later on in the later sessions as well. And in the end, the focus of it is to harmonize communication through different platforms. So SAP Business Network, our premier network, of course, and then also WBCSD and Catena X as two platforms that are also available to do the communication. Enable multi-tier communication, so communication in a full supply chain interoperably, which at least for WBCSD and Catena X is a key word. It means that it's not just an SAP ecosystem. It means it's interoperable. Other software packages can also be used to widen the reach for communication in the end. With that, we harmonize the data. All the data that comes in is the same, or at least calculated in the same way and communicated in the same way. And with that information, it flows into our strategy for the Green Ledger, enabling customers to use that data to make better calculations and also make better decisions on how to handle their sustainability strategies. I'll take over the sharing for a bit and we'll go towards a small demo that we will have a look at. Just let me just take a second to do that. Sorry, yes, I clicked on the wrong one. There we go. You can see that I have two tabs open. As I mentioned before, it's a BTP application. It's a multi-tenant BTP application, which means that the tenants in the end that we have, one tenant per customer, are connected with each other or can be connected to each other. And then outside of that, in the interoperable situations, you can also have business partners that use different setups, of course, and those are then connected through the facilities of the networks that are provided by those organizations. So we have different ways of connecting. And in the end, every party has their own data repository, their own tenant, which fits within their own SAP environment. And that in SAP environment could be only SDX because there is no prerequisites. You saw the question that I had on my Teams chat, maybe really quickly. There is no prerequisite. You can run SDX completely standalone or integrate it into in a complete SAP environment. And that includes integration to your ERP system to replicate your products, your business partners, and other relevant master data. And also an integration that we can set up through a configuration where you can integrate with your SFM system. And we'll dive more deeper into that application in one of the deep dives that we will have in the future. In principle, you maintain within your system your own company profile. That is what will be visible in our address book. And within the address book, you can see other members that you are connected to. So these are then SAP Business Network organizations that you can communicate with, or organizations that you are not connected to, and you would have the ability to invite them. This also works with the address book within the SAP cockpit as well. This means that you can only communicate with partners through the SAP Business Network, which are validated partners. And for the Catena X scenario, that is also the case, but that is managed within the Catena X platform, of course. But in principle, the exact same thing happens. You can only communicate with validated partners. You will only do that based on the products that you have, that you maintain yourself. So you as a supplier can, of course, maintain the products that you sell, and you can outbound manage your communication to your customers. Or alternatively, you have products that you procure, and those are communicated about within your inbounds app. So these are requests that you send out for data, and also data that is proactively sent to you. A very basic scenario to start with is basically if an organization, in this case an OEM, that is using their SDX, would like to request some data. And you can see different data sets that they are required for specific products that they, in this case, procure. So these are all supplied products in the end. And we can see that we have a product, which is an aluminium module from a steel company that is for currently expired, and we would like to request that data again. And if to do that, we can actually see that we have the previous information. We can see that it is actually expired, so the validity period has passed, and we can actually communicate and actually request. Requesting it basically means that there's a request, a message sent to the tenant of the supplier that you are communicating with, and they are asked to provide a standardized format, in this case, the World Business Council Pact format version 2.1, to be supplied back to them. You can do this then in the end for any product that you procure from them, bringing you back to here. If we then switch, which is something typically one single company would not do, of course, but as I now represent both the buyer and the supplier, I also have access to the supplier system. We can actually see that we have inbound requests for that organization to answer. Before that, I do that, I will actually want to have a look at the data that I have available within my system. I have actually maintained a couple of products, and I can see that I have valid data for them. As you can see, or as you saw on the buyer side, there were a couple of expired data, so there has been no update of data since then. We can actually have a look at that data as well. So this data could, for example, be supplied by our sustainability footprint management solution, which runs calculations periodically. And we can fetch that data and replicate that into our system to manage communication. And then in the end, as I mentioned, we have specification version 2.1, which is currently the one that we have implemented. Data can be collected based on that methodology paper, with all the required data and optional data that can be collected from suppliers in this case. In this scenario, the steel company that we're talking about has calculated their product footprints and is of course willing to answer those questions. So we can actually see in the outbound that I have 2 open requests right now. I can see actually that there is an update available, and an update available means that there has been a new calculation on my side, and I have not informed my customer of that new calculation. So this is a flag to show you that you have newer information than your customer or buyer has. And you can also see that one item they have never requested, but you have them linked in your master data as something that you would answer. You can then do a single reply, which looks exactly the same. You can send that, or you can also go into a multiple one and send both at the same time, and then reply back. What has now happened is that the data has been transferred from one tenant to the other based on that valid relationship. And if we would actually then go back into the buyer system, we can actually see in the inbound requests that we've now received the data, and that the one that is expired was not returned yet from steel company, but this one in the end has been, and we have now gotten the new information back from that supplier, therefore updating in the end the information that is available. Now, this was only a short demo of the solution as we have it available today. As mentioned, we will go deeper into that in the next session, where we also will explain more the methods of how to set up integrations, how to invite, how to connect, stories potentially on onboarding and other items. So we will have a look at more how to operate and set up in the system in that regard as well. From here, I will actually go back to the presentation. Let me go to presenter mode. So in summary, what you've seen now is a basic communication between two tenants. Data is maintained by the supplier, is requested by the buyer, and based on the willingness of the supplier, which is important, the data owner in the end keeps their sovereignty of the data. The data is valid only for a specific period of time as described by the pact standards, meaning that the usage of that data is only possible within the time frame as indicated by the supplier, and afterwards the data is expired. All these activities, all these communication activities are logged within a activity log where in future auditing capabilities, you will also be able to prove the data that you used, when it was valid, where it came from, that it was calculated correctly, etc., etc., etc. Now, just to go a little bit deeper into what does this mean? So what are we looking at? Well, within the SAP perspective, if you're looking at the strategy of SAP from a sustainability perspective, we are on the road to transactional accounting, as they say. And there are different sustainability applications that are part of that route towards that direction. So we already have Sustainability Control Tower on the market for a while, which allows you as a company to do CSRD reporting, for example. And with that, a little bit after the SCT solution, we also implemented the Sustainability Footprint Management solution, which is actually the solution that allows you to calculate your product carbon footprints for your manufactured products, and also corporate carbon footprints for your overall corporate sustainability reporting. The next step of that, as released GA last year, Q3, is now the carbon data sharing capability connected to the network, allowing you to collect the data that is directly pushed into the SFM system to improve the quality of calculations. In principle, the supplier data is more accurate than the secondary data. You are still free to use secondary data where suppliers are not giving you data yet, or potentially it's not worth the effort of spending the time on collecting that data at the moment. But you have the ability to start focusing on specific hotspots or even all products if that's what you want to do, and start collecting the carbon footprints. With that, getting more accurate calculations. And then the last step, as it was released in December of last year, is the Green Ledger capability for carbon accounting that allows you to do the transactional accounting based on in this case, also on supplier specific information, which is fed to it from the SFM system. From a portfolio perspective, and this is a more strategic outlook also from the solution, what you're seeing is the overall sustainability portfolio that we currently have. And you can see the different applications as SFM and SCT already mentioned, but Green Ledger, Green Token, and responsible design and production as well. And then within the S4 environment, we have environment, health and safety, and the product compliance capability. And you can see that Sustainability Data Exchange is set as an overarching application connecting to the business network. And this is where the strategy will follow on. So SDX will not be a single use case application just for scope 3. We will expand the capabilities into other use cases in the future as well, creating an app that is a one-stop shop for data, external data that will be required. Of course, the implementation of that is, as we are very tightly connected to standards, connected to that, regulations, of course, and activities as well as we move along. But in principle, what we want to do is harmonize the supply chain data into the environment of a corporate organization and allow for ERP-centric data and network data to be merged into one data set for all sustainability information required for the different processes that are being supported in the end. And then I think from here, I would hand over to Leyi for the last couple of slides.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim, for sharing our product insights. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, so as we also are closing to the end of the webinar, then I like to also share a compelling success story from one of our customers, Vita Automotive. And they actually is a customer for both SAP Sustainability Data Exchange as well as Sustainability Footprint Management customer, and used this integrated scenario of both solutions to assess, calculate, and share their product carbon footprint. And so by using Sustainability Data Exchange, Vita Automotive is able to manage and communicate the PCF value standardized and efficiently to multiple customers instead of just current one-to-one communication. And the same actually applies for their supplier communication. And this means they use the single solution or single tenant of SDX, which connect to their suppliers to collect accurate footprint data from for their purchased products and from both their smaller and large size actually suppliers, and as well communicating their own product carbon footprint of the finished goods to their larger OEM customers. And both direction worked very successfully, and this was hosted also within the Catena X network that we have mentioned also a couple of times. And by the way, SDX is also certified as a certified solution for the Catena X network that can be used and utilized and for the network communication on product carbon footprint. And as part of the onboarding team for Vita Automotive, it was a great pleasure and opportunity to witness firsthand the transformative impact for our customer of our solution. So that was really a huge milestone for us to see that progress with our solution evolving over the years. Yes, and then Then on the next slide, I will also really strongly encourage and recommend you to visit our product site on sap.com. It's really easy to remember, sap.com/SDX. And there you will find more information about the product, and you will see some videos and the concrete features. You can also navigate through our product tool. And of course, a heads up, we will also provide a free trial the next days or weeks that will stay tuned. It will come very soon. And then you will have the opportunity to access a live system for free to really get the first-hand experience on how the solution is working in the reality. Yeah. And also we have the digital sales motion also on our sap.com site that you can take a look at. Yeah, so there's a lot of information and to consume for you. And then with that, I will also would encourage you to register yourself for our deep dive session, which the link and Larissa will post in the chat. And also on the screen, on the next screen, you will have a QR code that you can scan to register yourself for our deep dive session. And there we will also deep dive deeper into the technical aspect of the solution and to see how it works with, for example, SAP Footprint Management to calculate and also share the carbon footprint in an end-to-end scenario. And also we will look at the network perspective more in detail, how the solution SAP Sustainability Data Exchange is working closely with, for example, our SAP Business Network, as well as with industry network like Catena X. So stay tuned, and we are looking forward to seeing you in the deep dive session in 2 weeks. So with that, I will hand over back to Larissa.
All right. Thank you very much, Leyi. Thank you very much, Tim, for the presentation and the demo. This is always very important to have this real touch of the solution. And during the session, I have been posting the links also to the materials. For example, I've posted the link to find more about Green Ledger, about ESG reporting, and more on the Sustainability Control Tower. So for your convenience, leverage these links and also check sap.com/sdx. This is also currently in the chat. So I have a question in the chat. I think this one is more for Tim, and the question is there any extensibility or functionality available if I want to source data from my suppliers who are not following standards or other than Catena X, WBCSD, or PACT?
Well, I think first we need to define what is a standard in this case. So in the end, these Catena X, WBCSD, and PACT as such are methodology papers, but on themselves hinge on other standards as well. So they are hinging, for example, on the greenhouse gas protocol, different of the ISO standards that are required for calculating a carbon footprint. So you can collect data within those standards. You will need to maintain them within SDX within the PACT format, but in principle, there is no different way of calculating those items there. And beyond that, you can still collect data within SFM itself as well. So from a network exchange perspective, the current standards that we are supporting are the Catena X, WBCSD, and PACT with SDX. But you have the freedom to collect also other specific information that is usable from an SAP standpoint, also within the SFM system, with file uploads, for example. So from an SDX perspective, only those three standards are there. But as said, we will become a bit more flexible in that perspective. But what is key is that we do not want to have a widespread set of standards or data sets, because that will just complicate the calculations. We need to be able to standardize it to ensure that the data is collected in a coherent way. So from an SDX perspective, we will always focus on it from a standardization perspective. But that does not mean that SAP as a whole, the portfolio from sustainability, then is not able to support those customers.
All right, thank you for that. I hope this answered the question, and the author of this question is sufficient for a moment. And I can only encourage our participants to register for the deep dive that we will be offering on the 19th of February. I've posted already a registration link in the chat. So for your convenience again, the link will be also included in the description to this video, and of course also in the PDF to this session that I will also include to the description. With this, if there's some more questions, now is the last chance to post them in the chat. If not, you are very welcome to be part of the deep dive session. There we will have definitely more time to go a little bit more into the detail. So with this, again, thank you, Leyi. Thank you, Tim, for being with us, for delivering these insights. And thank you to all participants who have joined live. This is great. And to those who will be watching the replay, also great that you are interested in this topic. With this, I thank you very much. I close the session and wish you a great day or evening.